So in this video, I'm going to explain to you why it's not complicated at all, why every blue-collar Catholic I know supports Donald Trump more today than ever. And I'm going to also explain why this sham court case is not very complicated to understand as well. But if you're new to my channel and you do want to support Donald Trump, I don't have a direct link to him, but I do have a direct link to a pro-life Catholic real estate company that supports pro-life ministries. It's called realestateforlife.org. So if you want to help our movement, help educate people on the horrendous crime of murdering unborn babies, that's realestateforlife.org. It's a patriotic Catholic real estate company. All the agents are patriotic Christians, mostly Catholic Christians. So you know your money ain't going to go to some woke company or some woke agent who's going to donate to some woke candidate. So realestateforlife.org. So right off the bat, we'll deal with this sham trial. So I know I have a lot of international followers. You may not understand how things work in America, so I'll break it down. It's real easy to understand. The media, we know for a fact for the last 30 years, every survey showed 95% of people in media, that's either written media or televised media, CNN, NBC, ABC, 95% of them said they never in their life voted for a Republican. And since when it comes to Donald Trump, even less. It's like 99% of them didn't vote for Trump. 99%. And years ago they would have subtle ways of putting in their bias. Now they've become activists, just like this judge is, and just like many Democrat appointed judges and Soros-backed DAs are very activist politically. So right off the bat, what Donald Trump did, what they're claiming he did, was he misfiled something. He put something down as a legal expense, and it should have been a political expense. No one in the history of Manhattan has been charged with this crime. That's number one. Number two, it's a misdemeanor, and the statute of limitations ran out. And the prior DA to this guy, Bragg, who brought it to the court, passed on it because he didn't think it was a big deal. He didn't think he broke any laws. But even though the statute of limitations ran out, this Democrat who got $1 million from George Soros to run for DA, because in New York City, the district attorneys, guy in charge of law enforcement for New York City, has to be voted in. And he said, if you vote for me, I'll find a crime on Donald Trump. I will put Donald Trump away. That's what he ran on. Well, just like what the Soviet Union used to say, show me the man, I'll show you the crime, which is antithetical to the American judicial system. But these guys don't care about the judicial system, and I'm going to prove it to you. They have a long history of this. This isn't new, And one thing that's confusing sometimes is not only the lying liberal media, but well-meaning YouTuber influencers feel they need to talk about this because it's a current event and they haven't been following politics their whole life. So they're confused, and then they're trying to explain it to their audience, and they're getting everybody confused. It's not complicated. I'm going to break it down. It is not complicated, I promise you. So the way DA Bragg brought this case, he did something no one else ever did. Legal scholars are scratching their head like, how can he get away with this? He took a misdemeanor crime that the statute of limitations ran out. He connected it to a federal crime, which has no statute of limitations, saying he used this crime to cover up this crime. Now, before you can indict someone and bring them to court, you have a grand jury. So a grand jury, usually you don't know who they are, but they're pretty respected people in the community. And then you present evidence to a grand jury. The DA would present evidence to the grand jury and say, do you think we should indict this guy? Well, Alvin Bragg, the guy who brought it to the grand jury, spoke to their star witness, Michael Cohen, who was Trump's lawyer. And he got a lawyer, Bob Costello, very well respected lawyer in New York, and said, you got to help me. They're coming after me. You know, the FBI is coming after me because I lied under oath. I lied to Congress. I lied in court. I lied to law enforcement. He's a liar. So he admitted he lied. So the lawyer said, okay, let me talk to the FBI. And he came back and said, listen, the FBI is saying if you have anything on Trump, they'll go easy on you. And he said, I have nothing. And he said he interviewed Cohen for like hours and brought up, what about this? What about that? And Cohen's like, no, he didn't know anything. I did all this on my own. He didn't know nothing about it. He just signed checks. He didn't know what was going on. So basically, Bob Costello tells us to Alvin Bragg. So this is big because now Alvin Bragg and the Biden administration get Cohen to turn on Trump. So he's saying he's only turning on him because he doesn't want to go to jail. He's in jail. And Alvin Bragg never brings that evidence before the grand jury. So they never heard that. So they didn't know this. So all they hear is Bragg's side why Trump should go to trial. So they picked the judge, a well-known Democrat judge who donated to the Biden administration. And the Democrats will say, well, it wasn't that much. Well, can you imagine if it was reversed and Trump picked a judge who donated to him? Their heads would be exploding. And not only that, his daughter received millions of dollars from Democrats because she's a consultant. And in fact, Adam Schiff paid her $200,000 for her consultant work. And he coached their star witness for a month, Michael Cohen, on what to say. And Adam Schiff is a known liar. He admitted on the oath he lied. You know, he made up this Russian collusion hoax. He said it on CNN. He said it on MSNBC, NBC, all the friendly networks to the Democrats. But under oath, he knew he couldn't lie. He said, no, all that, I just said that that's not true. I didn't have any evidence. There's no Russian hoax. We just did it to basically get Trump impeached. So he's an admitted liar. So it goes to court with a very partial judge. And then even Alan Dershowitz, a Democrat, lifelong Democrat, who voted against Trump at both times he ran, and actually was a big campaign bundler, like you get people to donate money because there's limits for Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. So he's an activist Democrat, but he's also a retired Harvard law professor and been practicing law in New York his whole life. And he said he's never seen such a corrupt judge because they set it up. They stacked the cards. In America, we got away from this tyrannical English kings that, they wanted you, they just lock you up. We made a lot of laws protecting the defendants. Like for one, the gag order. We don't let prosecutors talk about the case and badmouth the defendant because we want to defend the prosecutor, the defendant. But here the judge used that for the first time ever and reversed it and gave Trump a gag order and let Michael Cohen go on every talk show talking lies about Trump. So that was number one. Then when it came to the court, Trump's attorneys wanted to bring in the Federal Election Commission, the former chairman, a non-political guy, to just explain the election law. Because they knew if the jury heard what the election law was, they could see he wasn't guilty of violating it. And the judge knew that too. He wouldn't let him in. And Alan Dershowitz, again, a Democrat law professor from Harvard, brilliant guy. So that's unheard of. He said he was like in-your-face bias. Like they don't care. They just don't care. And then when Bob Costello got on the stand, Michael Cohen's lawyer, before Trump's lawyer even asked a question, Alan Bragg's lawyer would object. And the judge would say, okay, so it's sustained. So they weren't even letting him ask the question. So the jury didn't get to hear how Michael Cohen told him, no, Trump did nothing wrong. And then on top of that, Cohen tells this big story to the defense lawyer, and then the prosecutor catches him in a lie. So the prosecutor's like, listen, this guy just lied under oath. This is perjury. Can we get this thrown out? And the judge said, no, we're not throwing this out. Then they get Michael Cohen to admit he stole like $60,000 from Trump. He goes, yeah, Trump didn't know what was going on with his money. I stole it from him because I felt I deserved it. So now you have an admitted liar and admitted thief as the Democrats' number one witness against Trump, just so he could stay out of jail. I mean, it was so blatant. It was so obvious. And then when the Judge gave the instructions to the jury. In America, you have to have a unanimous decision. If one person doesn't agree with this decision, it's called a hung jury, and the man goes away innocent. It's called a hung jury. He tells them, no, you don't need a unanimous decision. If four of you think that he covered up election, if he misfiled under legal documents because he wanted to cover up an election law, and four of you want to think it's because he was covering up a business law, or and then I forget the other one, but it was three different things. So in other words, four of you could agree on this charge, four of this. And there's been 2 Supreme Court cases that said you can't do that. And the judge knows it, but they don't care. All they want is a conviction. And then he gives them this silly analogy. And this is when most legal scholars say, oh, no, they're going to vote against Trump. Because one of the notes that came back said, can you give us that rain analogy again? So he gives an analogy. He said, if you wake up and it's not raining, you don't see it raining, but you see the streets are wet and people walking around with umbrellas, you can reasonably assume it rained last night. So in other words, even if you can't prove that he committed a crime, if there's enough stuff enough hints, you can reasonably assume he committed this crime. But I would say this, I grew up in the inner city in Jersey, and I don't know if you're from a city like Jersey, I think New York has it too, where they have alternate street parking. Like, nobody has driveways. We all live in buildings with little alleyways. Some buildings are attached to other buildings, so nobody has a driveway. You park on the street. And it was always a pain in the butt when it was alternate street parking, because then it was only one side. It was bad enough to find a spot. If you were lucky to find a spot a block away from your house, you were happy. But on alternate street days, you'd be like 2-3 blocks from your house. And if it's snowing or raining, and you got groceries, it's a real pain in the butt. But the reason they do that in the inner city is because we have street cleaning on those days. So the street cleaner's got to come up and clean out the gutter and the curb, this like 10 feet from the street, and they spray water. So you could wake up in the morning and the street be wet. And the forecaster could have said rain later today, so people could be walking around with their umbrella. So that was a weak analogy. He was just, he wanted a conviction so bad. He was like, he just gave him so many ways. He made it impossible for an honest jury to make the right decision. But never mind, in New York City, in that area, in that borough he was in, he got 5% of the vote. So normally, a judge will give you a new venue if he says you can't get a fair trial. They refused to give him a new venue. I mean, like, all the cards were stacked against him. But most people see it. Common sense, blue-collar guys see this. And even not only my blue-collar Catholic friends, my blue-collar Catholic Protestant friends, my blue-collar Catholic unbelievers see this. He's getting the blue-collar vote, probably 100%. I feel like I'm missing stuff. So anyway, So anyway, this isn't new. This is not new to the Democrats. This is called lawfare, and the Democrats have been using this for years. So this guy, Jack Smith, who pressing charges trying to get Trump to go to jail for the documents. Well, I remember years ago, I was like, this guy's going to be the next president. He was a great governor of the state of Virginia. He was a strong Christian man. He just had all the twos, and the Democrats were afraid of this guy. They were afraid of this guy because this guy was a solid conservative Republican who ran the state of Virginia. He had like a 90% approval rating in the state of Virginia. Gave him a surplus every year, cut taxes, was pro-life, and his name was Governor Bob McDonnell. Jack Smith brought up some bogus charges against him about his wife accepting a gift from a lobbyist, and he was sentenced to jail. Now, he stayed out on appeal, but his political career was over. Forget about, I think Virginia, you can just serve one term if I'm not mistaken. So forget about any other. They destroyed his political career, and they knew it was bogus. And when it went to the Supreme Court, this is when the Supreme Court was mostly liberal, unanimously overturned it. But Jack Smith and the Democrats didn't care because they don't care about justice. They care about power. And that kept that man away from the White House, because he would, I mean, I wouldn't think it'd be a bad idea for Trump to tap that guy as his nominee, because he's a brilliant man, and he would bring the state of Virginia, which we bet if we win Virginia, it's over. That's, if you see we win Virginia that night, lights out. So, but but they've been doing this my whole life. Years before that, it wasn't Jack Smith. I forget this attorney's name. They went after Ted Stevenson. Ted Stevenson was very popular senator from Alaska. He was in a Senate race. He was favored to win by a big, big. And the Republicans would have retained control of the Senate. So a Democrat special DA goes after him. Not only do they arrest him, they actually put him in jail. I think he spent like 2 years in jail until it got to the Supreme Court. And again, a liberal Supreme Court unanimously overturned it. But they didn't care, because they don't care about justice. They care about power. They still had control of the Senate. And this is what they're doing with Trump. They know they can't beat him in the fall. So they're doing everything in their power to destroy him. And, I didn't think they would do this, to a president. But now I realize they don't care. They do not care. And, he'll be sentenced July 11th, 4 days before the Republican convention. And people are like, they wouldn't put a president in jail, an ex-president. These guys don't care. I wouldn't be surprised if they sentences him to jail time. Technically, they charge him on like 34 counts, so it comes out to like 136 years, because you can get 4 years for each count. But basically, it's one thing, falsifying documents. But he paid Michael Cohen like 34 times for this, because he got paid monthly or weekly, however. So it's the same charge 34 times. But the media makes it, he's 34-time felon. It's just one thing he did, but he did it 34 times supposedly. But the funny part is his lawyer, Michael Cohen, told him to do it this way. And now he's testifying against him because he did it this way. It's such a sham that the average blue collar guy understands this, because a lot of us have seen our kids or ourselves be railroaded by the system. And if they could do it to Trump, they could do it to you. So this is why so many of them are upset. But I have Democrats saying this is just wrong. We just got to fix this. I'm voting for Trump just on principle. And like I said, Alan Dershowitz, lifelong Democrat. There's no legal analyst out saying this was right. This is totally a sham. Totally a sham. But why do they hate Donald Trump so much? We've got other conservative presidents, Reagan, Bush. But no one has gone after the establishment like Trump did. Trump wasn't a part of the uniparty. He went in and said, well, this makes sense. Let's do this. Tariffs on China, that makes sense. But that got both sides upset, Mitch McConnell, the leading Republican senator, he's got a company that his Chinese wife owns, and they get subsidized by the Chinese government. And they make like $20 million a year shipping goods back and forth to China. It's a shipping company. So that kind of hurt him. Of course, it hurt Biden because his son, like 2 weeks out of rehab for crack addiction, got a contract with China for like $1.5 billion, and his commission was over $1 million. And based on the laptop, we know that he gave 10% to his dad, which is totally conflicted, totally illegal. You see, so the average people are seeing there's two tiers of justice. So the special prosecutor said Trump had documents he shouldn't have, and he admits it was in a locked, sealed room with a camera on it with Secret Service protecting it, but he shouldn't have had it. So they raid his house 5 a.m. with his family there, guns drawn. Well, his family wasn't there, guns drawn, and go through all his family stuff with the order that we now know, shoot to kill if you need to. Imagine, and this was after he's been negotiating with, it was the Library of Congress, who's run by Democrats, not the Library of Congress, it was like a library, political library in the White House. They gave it to him. Then they contacted the FBI and said, he has documents he shouldn't have. And they negotiated, they gave him some back, and they said, I think these we could keep, and they were negotiating. And every time they came in, he politely unlocked the thing, let them go through it, had his servants, or whatever you call them, his chefs feed the guys, the FBI guys. It was like nothing. and they were just negotiating what he could keep and what he couldn't, and then they had that raid. Compare that with Joe Biden, he had papers, highly classified documents in his garage that his crackhead son was living in, and you've seen pictures of his son in his Corvette with this papers all over, the garage door open. Then they find out he had it in 7 other locations. In Chinatown, he had a office, it was in there. The University of Pennsylvania, which gets $50 million from China, he had it in there, just in boxes, unlocked. And then even worse than that, a president is allowed to take classified documents. A president is allowed to make things classified. He can say this is unclassified just by saying it. A senator cannot. Joe Biden had top classic information from when he was a senator. And the only way he could see it is by going to a locked room, reading it, and you're not allowed to take anything out. And there's a guard outside to make sure you don't take anything out. So the only way he could have got it out was to stick it down his pants. And the special prosecutor for him said, yeah, he's guilty. Everything he did was wrong. But because he's an old senile man, no jury is going to convict him, so I'm not going to bring it to prosecution. I mean, come on. This is so blatant in your face. Just like Hillary Clinton. Comey said Hillary Clinton lied. She had classified emails on her server, her personal server, which is highly against the law. There's actually a sailor, an enlisted guy, lowly enlisted guy, who took a picture of a submarine. It's been sitting in jail for years because inside the submarines is highly classified. You're not supposed to take pictures, but he took a picture and sent it to his family. There was no nefarious. They didn't even claim he did anything nefarious. It was just he broke the law with classified information. And this regular guy like me and you, I was an enlisted guy in the Navy, sitting in jail for this. But Hillary Clinton had dozens, they found dozens of highly classified stuff on her phones. And then there were 30,000 more emails they asked for. She refused to give it to them. So she, the FBI subpoenas her. Imagine they did this to Trump and he said no. And then she bleach bits everything. I'm not sure how it works, but I know the mafia does this. They bleach bit their computers when the FBI, they think the FBI is coming, they grab their computers. Clinton bleach bit all her computers, her phones, and then she smashed all her phones and devices with hammers. Obviously trying to avoid the law. And Jeff Comey said, yeah, she's guilty, but no reasonable prosecutor would bring this to trial. They let her go. And look at all these. And so the average blue collar guy is seeing this and they're like, man, they're just out to get this guy. And you got to think, why? Why? Because he blew up their establishment. You had a uniparty for years. Republicans would say they were pro-life, but really didn't do nothing about it. Trump comes in, says, I'm pro-life. I'm going to appoint 2, maybe 3 Supreme Court justices, and they'll overturn this and get this back to the states where it belongs. And he did it. Every president since Carter has said, when I become president, I'm going to put the United States Embassy in Jerusalem, the recognized Jerusalem as the what's the word I'm looking for? Capital of Israel. None of them did it. Reagan didn't do it. Bush didn't do it. Nobody did it. They all promised it. Obama promised it like every year for 8 years. Trump does it his first year. He's overturning, like we know Biden is friends with Iran. Everyone knows, Biden administration will admit Iran is the #1 supporter of terrorism. Trump knew this too. So what did Trump do? He froze every penny of Iran's money that's in American banks that he could freeze, froze it. And they had no money to give to Hamas. They had no money to give to Hezbollah. They had no money to give to Houthis. And there was peace in the Middle East the whole 4 years. And they had no money because we became energy independent. So the cost for a barrel of oil was like $30. Trump comes in, frees up all hundreds of billions of dollars for Iran. And then we find out that his son was making money from, all these Muslim countries as a consultant. Again, a former crackhead with no experience consulting these Middle East countries. So people see there's just so much corruption, and Trump isn't playing with either side. He's coming in for the American people, and he's turning over tables. And, the politicians are afraid of this, And he knew, I think Trump knew, he knew like the business corruption And I knew that too. And, he said in New York, you have to pay off Schumer a bunch of money to get anything done in New York. And, and that's why people say, oh, you donated to Schumer. I was like, yeah, that's how you got things done. It's a corrupt system. He admitted it. But I don't think he knew, and I really didn't realize how deep the corruption is in the intelligence community. He realized that early on and started paying for private intelligence. Just like there's, I don't know if people know about Blackwater. It's like a private military that Bush used, and they had like 100,000 man army. I know a lot of former SEALs that went over there, and they got paid like $300,000 a year to go fight in the war on terror. Well, there's also apparently there's intelligence agencies, former intelligence guys that you can hire if you don't trust the CIA. And he said, why should I trust them? They got us in the Iraq war telling us there was weapons of mass destruction. We find out that was a lie. RFK Jr., whatever you think about him, he was pretty close, to his family. And he says the CIA came to his uncle, JFK, John F. Kennedy, and said, we need to send 200,000 troops to Vietnam. JFK Jr. said, you're crazy. Well, I'm not doing that. And he said a week later, his father was dead. And then, of course, Lyndon Johnson sent the 200th troops into Vietnam. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but this is what RFK Jr. is saying is a fact. And we know for a fact the CIA spied on him under Obama's direction when he was running for president and through his entire presidency. So that's like treasonous. And then you've seen in the re-election, when we got that laptop, Hunter's laptop, that showed his father was financially corrupt, that he was corrupt. They were taking money from our enemies, China, Russia, and then its allies. And everything it was totally illegal what they were doing. And 51 former intelligence guys, the day before the debate, said this is most likely Russian interference. And then the media ran with this. So 51 CIA guys say this is Russian interference. Now we know it's a fact. It's already been admitted. And all those same guys say, well, we thought it was. We didn't say 100%. We thought it. And so they were lying. So these were 51. And you say, wow, you thought the CIA would be patriotic like our military. But no. Obama's head of the CIA, John Brennan, is an admitted communist. I'm not making this up. In like the 1970s, I think 1976, he voted for a guy, Gus. Oh, that name escapes me. His first name was Gus. He was a communist on the ticket. And only reason he admitted it because he had to take a lie detector. And lie detectors work. So he admitted. But he spun it when Obama made him a CIA director. He said, no, I wasn't really a communist. I was just mad and I just wanted a protest vote. But there was other people you could have voted for, independent candidates if you just wanted a protest vote. He's a communist. He was one of the liars on the list. And it's not surprising because Barack Obama, in his own words, if you listen to his book, one of his books on himself, guy wrote 2 books about himself before he ever did anything, but one of the books he wrote about himself, I heard it on tape. I didn't take the time to read it, but he said, I really loved my Marxist professors the most. And on the weekend, I didn't like to go partying like the rest of the guys. I like to go to lectures by Marxists. I used to like to go to Marxist rallies. So what they do is they lie to us. They tell us Trump's this horrible racist. Van Jones, one of Obama's consultants and advisors when he was in the White House, another admitted communist, Van Jones. He resigned because Obama was taking too much heat about having this guy who wouldn't, he was honest. He's an honest communist. He didn't try and hide it. So he resigned. Obama asked him to resign. It was just taking too much heat early on in his presidency. So, of course, he got a job at CNN. And the night Trump got elected, he cried tears of sorrow. He couldn't believe Trump got elected. Then a year later, he was crying tears of joy. And he said this, he's an African-American Democrat strategist who calls himself a communist. Van Jones cried tears of joy and said, what Donald Trump did today, Donald Trump did more for black men in this country than any president in 50 years, in the last 50 years. So he was including his president that he worked for, Obama. And what did Donald Trump do? He reversed a ruling, a bill Joe Biden in the 90s came up with this crime bill, and he bragged it's going to put more people in jail for life than any other bill. But it unfairly targeted black men. You see, because if you got caught with crack cocaine, you can get a life sentence, a certain amount. But that certain amount of powdered coke, you got a slap on the wrist. And most black men were doing crack at the time. Most white men were doing powder. So, except his son Hunter, but he would have let his son Hunter go away. Son Hunter was hitting the crack pipe back then too. But Van Jones, but they spin it and they say this guy's a racist. This is why they can't, the media is in their bubble. They just talk to each other, and a lot of liberals just talk to each other and they watch liberal media. So they can't understand why Trump has the highest rating amongst blacks than any Republican, probably since Abraham Lincoln when he freed the slaves, because the average black person is smart enough to see through the bull. They see through the bull crap. Trump gives a speech the other day in the South Bronx with a mixed crowd, African Americans, Hispanics, whites, just blue collar guys in the South Bronx. I have a friend from the South Bronx. He said it's kind of like a rough section that he was in, probably one of the rougher sections of the Bronx. And he went, like 25,000 people showed up from the neighborhood. They weren't bussed in like, the Democrats do. And he gave them an inspiration. He said, together we can make New York the greatest city again. Together we can make America the greatest. And then he's giving an example of great businessmen and how they did well. And like, it was like an inspirational speech. It made people feel good and they're happy and loving each other. Biden goes to a black college and he's like so divisive. The Republicans want to put you back in chains. You're a black man. You got to work 10 times harder than a white man. And like the average black guy's like, no, I don't. Are you stuck in 1960? 1970, when Joe Biden, is on record, you could Google this, and you could hear him say that he was against segregation because in the 70s, Republicans wanted to desegregate it. They wanted to bring blacks and whites go to the same school. And then the Democrats were fighting it tooth and nail. And Joe Biden said, I will vote against desegregation because I don't want my children to grow up in a racial jungle. And then when Obama was beating Hillary, they asked him before he tapped him for his vice president, they asked Obama what he thought of they asked Joe Biden, what do you think about Obama? He goes, it's refreshing and nice, for once to see a clean, articulate young black man. It's like, what? And, the media ignores all this. They ignore it. They cover for the Democrats. But with so much social media now, it's hard for, ABC, NBC, and CBS had a lock. And then they had CNN and MSNBC that's even further left than those three. But they had a lock. They don't have that lock anymore. People are seeing, My black friends tell me they were way better off under Trump than they are today. So the average blue collar guy was way better off. Gas prices were lower. Wages were higher. Housing was cheaper. Food was cheaper. Everything was cheaper. We could live. Now we're all struggling. I just texted an old job, see if I could work on Saturdays, delivering ice again, just 12 hours a day, just to pick up some extra cash, because it's just getting impossible under the Biden administration for a blue collar guy to pay his bills on time. You're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. So just on that level, but then as a Christian, Donald Trump got Roe v. Wade overturned. He said he would. Not only that, the Mexico City policy, which my friend Dr. Alan Keyes, who's on this show, worked with Ronald Reagan to pass under the Reagan administration. And then every Democrat would get rid of it and every Republican would put it back. Says that we can't pay for taxpayers' abortion. But it was limited. Donald Trump comes in and he expands it from $700 million that can't go for groups that support abortion to $7 billion that won't support abortion. So under Donald Trump, Americans weren't paying for abortion anywhere in the world. Under Joe Biden, we're paying for abortion everywhere in the world. And Joe Biden said he wants abortion legal through the 9th month and beyond. Yes, beyond. They believe in infanticide. This is in the Democrat platform. So it is clear, it's not complicated, why every blue-collar Catholic I know is voting for Donald Trump. And again, if you want to support this conservative movement, go to realestateforlife.org. They're not going to give money directly to Trump, but they're going to support pro-life ministries like me and other places that explain what's going on. Because a lot of people don't know. You know, when I tell people in New York, in New Jersey, California, they allow abortion through the 9th month, they call me a liar. And then I got to show them. I look up the law and I show them. They're like, wow, I never knew that. So we got to educate people. You know, Trump did his job. He got it back to the states. Now it's up to us to get the people in the state to pressure their politicians like we have in Florida, where it's a 6-week ban. Once you hear a heartbeat, you can't kill that baby in Florida. So we can do it. You know, no one thought Roe v. Wade would be overturned, but we could do it. But now it's up to us. We can't depend on Trump to do everything. So if you're buying or selling a house, please go to realestateforlife.org. And, you know, even if you're not a Republican, I have a lot of friends that are Democrats, but they believe in freedom of speech. And they believe in a fair judicial system. And they see this Democratic Party has become so tyrannical. You know, they used to call Trump a fascist. And then when he didn't act like a fascist during the pandemic, they got mad at him. Remember, they were mad because he wouldn't impose all these strict rules, like California, who Governor Newsom said he looked to China and followed the way they did it. Yet, just like China, the elites didn't have to follow it. Remember, we seen Newsom and Nancy Pelosi out with no mask, laughing, dancing, joking, drinking wine. Kids in California couldn't go to public school for 2 years. Gavin Newsom's kid never missed a day because he was going to private school. This is what the Democrats do. Do as I say, not as I do. They're tyrannical. And thank God I live in Florida, because if I still lived in Jersey, I would have been under a tyrannical government. This is why Florida's growth, you know, people from New York and New Jersey are flooding us, you know. So if you want to be one of those people to come down, go to realestateforlife.org. Tell them Blue Collar Catholic sent you. And, you know, there's a lot more I could tell you. There's so much corruption in this Biden administration. And, you know, I've been watching politics since the early 80s, you know. I'm an old man, since the early 1980s. And I've never seen such a corrupt administration as the Biden administration. They got to be stopped, because if we don't win this election, we're going to be living under communist rule. They're tyrannical, because they've already said it. If they get the majority in the Senate, and if they get the majority in the Senate, they will get rid of the filibuster. They will get rid of the filibuster. Then they're free to do two things they want: to make Puerto Rico a state and Washington, D.C. a state, which is guaranteed to keep the majority Democrat in the Senate for a long time. And with that majority, they actually said they want to pack the courts. You know, they had a majority for 50 years, the liberals. After Trump, we got the majority, and they just can't handle it. So they want to add 3 more judges. There's 9 Supreme Court justices, and it's like 6-3 conservative to liberal, but you got one that kind of goes either way, you know, so sometimes there's 5-4. But they want to add 3 or 4, I forget what they said. And they're all going to be liberal judges. And then it'll be like Venezuela, you know. These people are friends with Venezuela. The Democrats are socialists with smiles. That's all they are. So God bless, stay Catholic, and vote pro-life.